The gun may be the most world-changing weapon humans ever created. It shattered empires, ended night warfare, reshaped continents, and permanently altered human civilization. But the strangest part of the story is this. Guns were never supposed to exist. Nobody originally set out to invent a firearm. The entire chain of events started with people trying to do something completely different. They were trying to become immortal. In the 9th century, deep in the mountains of China, Taoist alchemists searched obsessively for an elixir of eternal life. They mixed minerals, herbs, powders, and strange chemical recipes passed through generations of mystical tradition. They believed the correct combination might allow humans to live forever. Then one experiment went catastrophically wrong. At some point, someone mixed saltpeter, charcoal, and sulfur together. Instead of creating immortality, the mixture exploded violently. Historical records mention burned hands, singed beards, and destroyed workshops, which tells you exactly how the first encounter with gunpowder probably felt. Nobody in that room thought they had invented the future of warfare. They called the substance huoyao, meaning fire medicine. The name still carries the awkward memory of its original purpose as a failed pharmaceutical. But that accidental batch of failed immortality medicine would eventually become the foundation of every gun ever built. Every rifle, cannon, pistol, and firearm on Earth traces back to that moment. So how did humanity get from a failed Taoist potion to the gun? The answer unfolds slowly across centuries of experimentation and war. It begins with bamboo tubes strapped to spears, then metal barrels, then primitive hand cannons, then mechanical firing systems, then armies built entirely around gunpowder, and eventually a technology powerful enough to collapse medieval civilization itself. To understand how that happened, we first need to understand what gunpowder actually is, because the chemistry explains everything that came afterward. The original mixture combined potassium nitrate, charcoal, and sulfur in carefully balanced ratios. Saltpeter acted as an oxidizer, releasing oxygen extremely quickly during combustion. That rapid reaction produced an enormous expansion of gas, and that expanding gas became the secret behind every firearm in history. The same force launching fireworks into the sky could also launch a metal projectile through armor. But in its earliest uses, gunpowder was not a weapon at all. It powered fireworks, smoke signals, festivals, and religious ceremonies. Ordinary people in China encountered gunpowder mostly as entertainment and spectacle. Bright explosions lit the night sky long before they lit battlefields. For generations, nobody fully understood what this substance would eventually become. That changed during the Song dynasty. Military engineers realized gunpowder's explosive force might be useful in combat. Between the 10th and 12th centuries, they developed the fire lance. The design was brutally simple. Take a bamboo tube, strap it to a spear, pack it with gunpowder, then ignite it during close combat. The weapon blasted flame and burning debris directly at nearby enemies. Suddenly, an ordinary spear became something terrifying. During the Siege of Dian in 1132, defenders used fire lances against attackers climbing city walls. By every surviving account, the weapon worked exactly as intended. Soldiers who had spent their lives fighting blades suddenly faced enemies projecting fire itself. And on medieval battlefields, psychological terror mattered almost as much as physical damage. Once gunpowder proved useful in war, innovation accelerated rapidly. Engineers began stuffing pellets and shards of pottery into fire lances alongside the powder. The weapon no longer just burned enemies. It blasted projectiles outward with real force. This was a massive conceptual leap, because for the first time, gunpowder was being used to launch physical objects at lethal speed. The foundational concept behind every firearm had now appeared. But bamboo had limitations. Stronger explosions often split the tubes apart in the user's own hand. The solution arrived once Chinese craftsmen learned to cast bronze barrels strong enough to contain the pressure safely. And with that innovation, the hand cannon was born. Now gunpowder could propel a solid projectile farther and harder than any fire lance ever could. By the 13th century, metal-barreled hand cannons were already spreading across China. Engineers scaled the concept upward into massive explosive weapons like thunderclap bombs and heaven-shaking cannons. Fortifications that once seemed invincible suddenly became vulnerable. Then the Mongols arrived. During invasions like the Siege of Kaifeng in 1232, Mongol forces encountered gunpowder weapons firsthand. And rather than resisting the technology, they absorbed it. That decision changed world history permanently. Once the Mongols conquered China and established the Yuan dynasty, they carried gunpowder technology westward across Eurasia. Their invasions unintentionally became one of history's greatest technology transfer systems. Gunpowder spread across Asia faster than trade routes alone ever could have managed. And the technology evolved in multiple directions simultaneously. Chinese engineers also developed rockets and fire arrows powered by gunpowder. These weapons spread into Korea, India, and beyond. One branch of gunpowder evolution led toward the firearm. Another branch eventually led toward rockets. Both emerged from the same accidental discovery made by alchemists searching for immortality. Gunpowder eventually reached the Islamic world and Europe through conquest, trade, and cultural exchange. And Europe turned out to be the perfect environment for firearms to evolve explosively. Early European hand cannons were crude, slow, inaccurate, and awkward to fire. Soldiers loaded powder and projectiles into the barrel, then ignited it manually with a burning cord. Most shots relied more on optimism than accuracy. But even primitive firearms carried terrifying advantages. Castle walls that had survived centuries of siege warfare began collapsing under cannon fire. Heavily armored knights suddenly faced weapons that ignored armor entirely. The entire medieval military order started breaking apart. Because now an inexpensive soldier carrying a gun could kill a heavily trained noble cavalryman. Centuries of feudal warfare began collapsing under gunpowder pressure. This transformation reshaped architecture itself. Traditional castles with tall vertical walls became dangerously obsolete. Military engineers replaced them with lower, thicker star forts, specifically designed to absorb cannon fire. Then came the next major breakthrough, the matchlock. For the first time, soldiers could fire guns using a mechanical trigger system instead of manually applying flame. Matchlocks evolved into wheellocks, then flintlocks, each generation becoming faster, safer, and more reliable. Eventually, firearms spread across Europe, the Ottoman Empire, China, and Japan, reshaping warfare everywhere they appeared. Entire armies reorganized themselves around gunpowder weapons and bayonets. And the most important thing to remember is this: none of it was planned from the beginning. The weapon that reshaped human civilization began as a failed attempt to discover eternal life.